Hey everyone, Meltyman234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff you may or may not have heard of. Today we'll be looking at one of my favorite Forgotten SEGA characters, known as Vectorman. An interesting character who looks like he was from Balls 3D, but it's a good thing he didn't appear in that game. So anyway, let's start off with this first game, simply known as Vectorman, that was created by Blue Sky Software, and was released for the Sega Genesis on October 24th, 1995. In the year 2049, a group of mechanical creatures called Orbots have been built to clean up the Earth's pollution and littering. One day, an Orbot named Rastar is accidentally attached to a nuclear missile in his head, which corrupts with his mind and goes insane as he becomes Warhead, who declares himself ruler and sends his minions to attack the human population. And it's up to Vectorman to save the Earth and defeat Warhead. I wonder if that's actually going to happen in the year 2049. Vectorman's gameplay is a typical run-and-gun platforming game. Its graphics use pre-rendered 3D models, which makes the game have that computer-generated feel to it. It was pretty awesome back in the day. People have said that the graphics are similar to Donkey Kong Country, as they display graphics that the consoles weren't capable of during the time. Music in this game is pretty awesome, having that sweet techno beat. Vectorman has a variety of guns, from laser guns to spread guns and more. Vectorman can also collect a few power-ups that give him special abilities, such as becoming a drill, or bomb, or a vehicle. There are also televisions that are scattered around through levels that act as item boxes, whether it's the ability to morph into something, an extra 1-up, or some points. Who knows? You'll never know what you're going to get out of those things. Even though the enemies are pretty interesting, it seems like some of the bosses aren't that interesting. There's one area where you have to fight 3 different bosses, and one of them looks like Jaws from Sonic the Hedgehog on stilts. Another thing is that they sometimes tend to reuse the same levels and give them different textures and such. When the game was released, it was a critical and commercial success, as the game was nominated for Best Genesis Game of 1995. It was praised for its graphics, level design, and soundtrack, but its solid gameplay is what holds the game together. Overall, Vectorman was a great game. It was so great that it got its own sequel, Vectorman 2, as Blue Sky Software returns to make it, and was ported once again for the Genesis, and was released on November 15, 1996. After Vectorman defeated Warhead and saved the Earth, Vectorman takes his space shuttle for a spin, but then his shuttle is struck by a missile, and Vectorman parachutes his way down to the ground, where he must battle mutant insects and defeat the Black Widow Queen. The gameplay and graphics are the same as before, with a few modifications. Vectorman's voice is given more of a deeper voice instead of his normal robotic voice. Familiar power-ups from the first game come back, as well as some new ones like the Pulse Beam, Energy Shot, and Super Shot. There are new power-ups that are similar to animals, such as the Fire Ant and Shield Bug, and one of my favorites is the Rhino form, which makes you seem like you're invincible, charging into random enemies. The game has 22 levels that are divided into 7 parts, as some levels have a run-and-gun platform, some of them have a vehicle level, like a tank level, and then we have the boss levels. While the game was in production, Sega Channel held a contest that allowed artists to draw a form for Vectorman, and if they liked it, they would feature it in the game. 10 runner-up submitters won a copy of Vectorman 2 for their work. A man by the name of Josh Krebs was one of the lucky few winners to win the Vectorman Morph contest. The one thing about Vectorman 2 is that the difficulty level is more harder than the first game, but overall the sequel is pretty good. I have played both games and they are a lot of fun. During 2003, it was announced that a new Vectorman game was in the works, even though the company Blue Sky Software was shut down in 2001. The game was going to be for the PlayStation 2, but unfortunately, the game was cancelled and never released. The game was going to try something new, but people were alienated by its new style, from going from a creative and lighthearted run-and-gun platformer into another generic, overly serious third-person shooter. Not much is known for its story, whether it's going to be a continuation, a reboot, an alternate universe, who knows. It looks like you would run around in big open areas, shoot stuff, and carry things. This is what Vectorman was going to look like in the game. His design is very similar to Master Chief, and his voice was going to be in more of a higher pitch for some reason. Some say that when the criticism for the game was not that well received, they decided to pull the plug on it. I guess people were expecting it to be an actual Vectorman game, but instead we saw this, and come to think of it, it seems like the new Vectorman game is very similar to Halo. Since the first Halo game was already released during the time, could it possibly be that the new Vectorman was actually ripping off Halo? Well, anyway, when the third game was cancelled, people started to forget about Vectorman, and he pretty much bit the dust and was never seen again. As for his two only games, you can either find them for the Genesis, which are a little bit hard to find, or check out some of the video games that feature it. The two games have been ported to a few compilation games, such as Sonic Gems Collection, Sonic Genesis Collection, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, and Sega Genesis Classic Pack. The first Vectorman game was released for the Virtual Console on February 27th, 2007, and I'm not sure if the sequel made it to the Virtual Console or not. I'll have to say, it's a bit of a shame that Vectorman wasn't featured in any of the Sega Superstar games. I would have loved to see him back in action. In closing, Vectorman is a more underrated character who doesn't get the respect he deserves. He appeared in two wonderful games, and I think it's about time he deserves a more proper second sequel. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media. So this is Melting Man 234 signing out.